share any information, stories about anything else regarding ARFF, please feel free to jump in. As you can see from the slide, today we're going to be talking about airfield rescue and firefighting, otherwise known as ARFF. This is everything we're going to be talking about today. You can see it off the left-hand side, and here we go. What is ARFF? Went to Wikipedia, of course. Aircraft rescue and firefighting is a special category of firefighting that involves response, hazard mitigation, evacuation, and possible rescue of passengers and crew of an aircraft involved in typically an airport ground emergency. On the right-hand side, these are some of the things that I think about. So does the airfield meet ARFF requirements for the C5? Is the airfield exempted from ARFF requirements? That should actually probably say, are we required from, or are we exempted from, what do I want to say? Are we exempted from having to meet the necessary requirements for that airfield, I guess? And then third, what crew action is required? So on categories and capabilities, this chart is a bit confusing. You can find it in the, so you look in the 11208, you'll see a smaller version of this. This one is, I think it's the 2003. It's in the resources in the back of this, back of the slideshow, but you can look at it later. So it's confusing because it says combined airfield categories and for comparison purposes. What's confusing is over on the left, you see United States Air Force and then NFPA, which is National Fire Protection Agency. Those are in reference to the category of the airplane. So under Air Force, and instead of category, it's actually a vehicle set. So 1 through 6, that just talks about the type of aircraft. And then for the NFPA, the category can either be the airfield or that airplane. And then over to the right, FAA and ICAO, those are talking about the category of airfield. And what the category basically is, it represents the number of resources available to fight a fire. So you'll see like fire trucks and gallons of firefighting agent there. What I have highlighted is the category that references what we can use as a C5 without really having to do any more action. And what I mean by that is like going to get a waiver, going to call other people. And we'll discuss that shortly. For Navy, I don't know. I didn't look into it. So levels of service. I'll go back to this page real quick. So for FAA and ICAO, you see category. That kind of talks about, again, those resources that are available at that certain airfield. And it lets pilots know what they can expect to have in case there's an emergency. The Air Force, and I'm pretty sure other DoD airfields, but they also use level of service. And what that basically is it tells you how big of a fire they can fight, basically. So optimum level of service for a certain amount of airplane, they can basically save the airplane, and then reduced, critical, and inadequate, which is basically you can expect to lose the airplane and there's possible loss of life. And each of those also have a color. Well, at least optimum, reduced, and critical have a color associated with it as well. So green for optimum, yellow for reduced, and red for critical level of service. Again, stay with me, it might be kind of confusing. We can see examples of this further on in the brief. So where can you look? Where can you look to see what kind of service you can expect? I have examples of each of these in the following slides, so we'll just get on with that. So NOTAMs, you'll see this first one. It says, so ARFF is limited to C-130 and smaller aircraft, and then for larger aircraft, contact the fire chief. So for that, you'll have to just call them and see what they have. And then fire and rescue downgraded to ICAO Cat 5. That's what it'll look like there. And then below that is, during operating hours, it's Cat 6 is available. And then higher at other times, only on request. And then down below, you'll see there's critical level of service. This is an Air Force field for C-17 and larger aircraft. And hopefully that makes sense because for large aircraft, they need more firefighting resources. If a little DA-20 flies in there, you're not going to need the whole cavalry. But below this, I made this one bigger because it gave a bit more information. It says they have 10 personnel, 3 vehicles, and 6,300 gallons of agent. This is some information you'll need to figure out the amount of service that they have, and we'll again discuss that later on. At this point, does anybody have any questions? Am I talking too fast? Anybody confused? Okay, moving on. So G2 and the Giant Report are other places that you can look to find out the category the airfield is. So the top right there, that is in G2. You can go to Airfield Search, type in the airfield, and then just click on the identifier, and then this will pop up. You go down to ARFF right there. So for this airfield, it's Cat 7, and then ETOPS is extended operations. So that's that. And then the Giant Report, you just look in there, you scroll down to ARFF information, and then ICAO index is 10. And if you remember back a few slides, that's like the best amount of service that they have. So the airfield stability diagram or the steps, you can come in here. So Sacramento or San Francisco International Airport, you'll see that has ARFF index Echo. And then below that is Travis. It says the steady ARFF condition for Travis is optimum level of service for categories 1 through 6. So if you remember, on the far left, categories 1 through 6, we have optimum level of service for there. And then this is actually something that I didn't really know existed until I was actually prepping for this. This brief, the Automated Air Facilities Intelligence Files. You can find it under NGA. If you do not have an NGA account, I recommend getting it. This, other than the information I'm about to show you, it has a bunch of stuff like flip, and you can print off current airfield diagrams and stuff like that. Anyway, so you go to this AFIF, and then you go to special purpose equipment, and then underneath there, it'll show you different information on their ARFF capabilities. This example right here shows you that this airfield is ICAO Cat 9, which is good for us. One more about that, this shows you the different kind of resources that are available. The P27, P22, P24, all of those are different kinds of trucks. And it shows you how many gallons that they have available for firefighting agent. One last thing, the Aeronautical Information Publications. This is, I think this is Latvia. You can find these under, or in ForeFlight. You just go to Documents, and then you go to a certain country, and you can download their specific apes and stuff like that. But right here, you saw it belongs to Cat 7 for their category for firefighting. Okay, so hopefully that all made sense. Next, we're going to get into when correction is required, and this is kind of where we need to pay more attention and kind of understand what's going on as far as the capabilities go. So right here, I wrote, when is correction required, or am I exempt? The airfield you're flying to does not satisfy the following exemption criteria, then you will need to do some footwork, and I'll explain what that means. So DoD airfields. So any airfield worldwide where a DoD manager or contractor is present and operates under their respective DoD ARFF guidance. So that means if you're flying to pretty much any DoD airfield in the world, if they are below, or if they have a NOTAM or something that says they're below whatever ARFF, then you can still fly there. But that being said, if you're confused, do not hesitate to call TACC or the airfield manager just to back yourself up. The second one, takeoff and landing frequency. Basically, if there are infrequent operations for your certain category of airplane, then you can continue in there without needing a waiver. So that's defined as 2 or more planned takeoffs and 2 planned landings within 7 consecutive days, and that's C5 specific. How do you get that information? You can call up the airfield, talk to the airfield manager, and they should be tracking that. The last 2, so FAA Part 139 airfields, is basically just a fancy title for airfields that meet a bunch of certain criteria to get on the list. I honestly don't know more than that, but they need to meet a bunch of requirements to be able to be on this list. If those airfields are designated as ARFF Index E, then we do not need to seek out a waiver. And then same with ICAO airfields. If they are designated as performance level category 9 or higher, then you do not need to seek out a waiver or do any other sort of crew action. Here's some examples. This is what FAA Part 139 airfields list looks like. You can just type that into Google, and it'll bring you to the FAA website, and this will be an option to open up. So as you see down below, so all of them except for Anchorage, they are ARFF Index Alpha. You can see that on the right. That means that you'll need to get some sort of waiver, or you'll need to figure something out in order to go there. Anchorage is Echo, so you don't need to do anything. And then while I'm here, so you see ARFF Index A. Actually, I'll scratch that. We'll talk about that in a second. And then ICAO airfields. This is for Marone. You can see that aircraft rescue and firefighting capabilities are green, so optimal level of service for Cat 3 through 8, and yellow, reduced level of service for Cat 9 and 10 aircraft. So this is where it mixes like the Air Force standard of talking about airfield and the NFPA. So I'll go back here real quick. So it says it's green for, I think it was 5 through 6, and then yellow for 9 and 10. So here they're using the NFPA category for airplane, and we are Cat 10. Okay, so basically if the airfield you're flying to doesn't meet any of those previous exemptions, then you reference 10.3 in the 11208. Here is the 10.3. What you'll need to do here is, so if it doesn't meet any of those requirements, then you'll need to do a little bit of research. You need to find out how many firefighters they have, and the amount of gallons of firefighting agent that they have. And sometimes this will be in the NOTAMs, like we saw for, let's see, where's the example? So you look in this NOTAM, you see there's 10 personnel and 6,300 gallons of agent. So you take that, you go into here. So there's 10 personnel. Okay, great. So that fits in the reduced level of service, but there's 6,300 gallons of agent. That doesn't fit here. So that'll drop us down to the critical level of service due to the amount of agent that they have. There's a footnote for critical level of service. So you come down here to 3. So if you're below critical level of service, actually we'll go to 2. So if you're below reduced level of service, which we are at critical level of service, then you need TACC XOZ, that's the senior, you'll need his approval, or a designated representative. So it's kind of confusing because of where the footnotes are, but basically, if you're at a reduced level of service, all you need is crew awareness. You just need to know about it. If you're at critical level of service, then you need the senior approval. And then if you're at inadequate level of service, then you'll need 18th Air Force Commander approval. So again, like you look at NOTAMs, you look in the AAP, you call the airfield manager, you call TACC to see if they're even tracking it, and then you can go from there. So if you know this beforehand, you can fill out a form 679 to begin that waiver request if it hasn't already been done so. And then if you're already on the road, then you can call TACC and get a verbal approval. A couple extra things. This slide is basically saying if you're carrying any special weapons like nukes or guided missiles, then you'll need at least one of these P-19 vehicles if you're doing any onload or offload operations, or if you're starting into taxi and takeoff. And then when we're here flying locals, if you're flying to an airfield where the ARFF capability is at a critical level of service, then you'll need to seek out the group commander's permission. So I guess we already went over this, but here's the example for McCall Airfield. You see 10 personnel, 6,300 gallons of agent. That dropped us down the critical level of service, so we would need senior approval. This is everywhere I looked, and it was short and sweet, but does anybody have any questions or would like me to go over anything else?
Hey Sam, I've got one thing. It's Heather here.
Yeah.
I thought you covered everything. I just have one thing to add. It's like the second paragraph in that ARFF chapter in the 208. It talks about, and maybe you said this and I just missed it. Like if there's a published NOTAM restricting a specific aircraft, so if there's a NOTAM specifically stating a restriction to C5s, then even if any of the exemptions apply to that airfield, we can't use the exemptions.
Yeah, no, that's great. I left that one out. Thanks.
Yeah, and then the follow-on statement is that if it's degrading its ARFF capabilities, so the DoD manager at a DoD field can still put out a NOTAM saying that he's reduced or critical, and then we would still have to follow the table and comply with the waivers, regardless of the DoD manager being present on the field.
Awesome. Guans, did you have a question? Okay. Anybody else? Questions, comments, stories?
I was with, this is Millie. I was with Zach McCulgan on his OME. We were supposed to be flying into Kadena, and Kadena had put out a NOTAM saying that they were inadequate level of service, which is pretty clear for us. We're reading the chapter. We know what that means. Like, we're going to burn to the ground and die if we go in there and have a mishap. So we called up TACC and we were like, so, like, how important is this cargo exactly that you think we want to go into this inadequate field? And the, like, DO that we were talking to was like, it's waived, just go. Like, he didn't even understand this chapter at all. Like, Zach had to talk him through, like, line by line, like, look, I don't think you understand. This requires, like, the 18th Air Force's commander's waiver, not your waiver. And so it required him to dig way into these terms and, like, read in paragraphs until the DO that he was talking to understood that we really were not going to go into Kadena unless it was the most important thing in the universe. And then they just rewrote the whole mission and sent a C-17 instead.
Yeah, I actually had a similar experience at Kadena, and they ended up just telling us like, oh, well, we called up the fire chief, and he just said we put that there as a placeholder. We actually have enough enough people for you. For Alec, that's a good question. I've actually never thought about it before. To answer your question, I don't think it changed my decision that much. Anybody else?
I think if anything, it's just some good information that needs to go into the waiver if you're having to request it, because that might change whoever's doing the waiver, might change their decision.
And yeah, Dallin, I'll post the slides to Slack right after this. If nobody else has any questions, I can pass it off to the group if they have any announcements for anybody. Or
hey Sam, this is Tyler Will.
Yeah, what's up?
I just like to bring up a discussion on takeoff and landing frequency. I had this on my LTMs. Just wanted to see what everybody thought about it. So you said it's not more than 2 planned takeoff and landings within 7 consecutive days.
Yeah.
You said that's for the C5 only.
Yes. It's different for like smaller airplanes.
Right. So I don't know. The way I always read this, because it says vehicle sets 4 through 6.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're tracking like 2 individual C5s. The way I view it is it's those sets 4 through 6 if there's more than 2 planned takeoff and landings.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I've always used it as like that whole category. So like, I think it's like KC-10, KC-46, like any of those, because really that's saying like they could put out a fire on that big of an aircraft and then still be able to put out a fire on your size aircraft.
Yeah, no, that's good. I didn't look at it from that perspective.
Want to make sure people are seeing that maybe like in that point of view, because a lot of people are like, oh, there's not 2 C5s going in 7 days, so we're good. I think it's supposed to be through the 4 through 6 vehicle set.
Sorry, can you explain that whole scenario again? Because I'm assuming like yeah, we have enough trucks to put out a fire on a C-17, but do they have enough capability to do the C-17 and the C-5? Is that where you guys are getting at?
Here, I'm gonna pull up the 208 real quick to just show everybody that paragraph.
Yeah, it's page 96, 10.3.2. It's like the last sentence in the paragraph.
I'm on a different computer. Yeah. So if anybody's got their iPad, you can just pull it up. Yeah, Tyler, hate to pass the buck off to you on this, but I changed this to my personal laptop when I moved the PowerPoint.
So basically, Dallin, what I was trying to say is like, you're probably the frequent takeoff and landing frequency is not just gonna be a C5 going in and out of a field. And I don't know how us as pilots are, running a mission, we're gonna track it. So it's somewhere where we have to really look and talk to TACC about it. And if we're gonna use this paragraph, see how many other mission or vehicle sets are going into that field. Like Heather was talking about the KC-135, KC-46, C-17, or KC-10. If there's other missions that are going into that field, it could go above that 2 planned takeoff and landings.
And, sorry, go ahead.
The issue is, let's say like I think is it Bangor or somewhere up in Canada, like they have that issue, where it's like, yeah, like we don't know if a C-17 went in there within the last like 7 days, and then like if there's 3 chocks of C-5s going through there too, then you're obviously busting that limit, right? Is that what you're getting at, Tyler?
Yes. What was the original question again, Dallin?
Like sweet. So like a vehicle sets 4 through 6.
Right.
That's basically off of what is that?
Like what are those airplanes?
So it says USAF vehicle sets 4 through 6, which are those like the 135, the 46. I have it pulled up in front of me. You're not supposed to more than 2 planned takeoffs and 2 planned landings within 7 consecutive days. And like I'm right there with Tyler. It's like how are we supposed to know that without? I'm assuming we just talked to the airfield manager.
So one of the more advanced functions of G2 is to pull station reports for airfields. You can see the past pretty much however long you like, every AMC mission that's tracked that flew in and out of that airfield. by ICAO. You can search them.
How do you find that? Do you remember off the top of your head?
Not without having G2 up, I can't like talk through it, but I have run airfield reports before. I'm not sure if it shows you future missions, so it would be part of your pre-mission planning for has it happened, not is it happening during the entire mission frequency that I'm there. So its usefulness is maybe a little bit limited, but you can see at least who has been there in the past couple days.
Hey, what's up? It's Mark. You can find it on active sorties or station workload. You just search by the field. You can go up to a month. I think it's up to the whole month. So you can see either what's gone in the past month or what's coming up in the next month if you want to go that far.
And if you can't access G2, you can use SMS for those of you who have it.
So question though, like, do we really care about what happened over the past week? Because if 100 airplanes went there 6 or 7 days ago, but nobody had a fire and none of the resources were used, do I really care? Like, if 0 are coming in the next 7 days and I'm the only one, aren't I still infrequent because they would only have to take care of me?
Well, this is just my opinion, but mine is that, hopefully if they had to utilize some of those ARFF resources, they would have published a NOTAM stating that they have reduced level of capabilities now if they did have to fight a fire within those previous 7 days. So I'm with you, like, I typically just care about future 7 days. And that's not exactly how it's worded, but that's the logical way that I think through it.
Yeah, I think for airfields, when they have an incident that goes on, the airfield or the fire chief looks at what their capacity is to support operations. So back when the 777 crashed in San Francisco, the fire chief actually shut down the airport because they're already responding to another incident. Plus, they're dealing with this crashed 777. So they're going to make an on-spot decision if the airfield can even continue operations. So that's one piece of the puzzle there. As far as this 208 guidance about within the 7 consecutive days, I don't know if they're just trying to get at more of a general feel for if we're going to have this level of ops tempo, we're going to it's basically if the Air Force wants to accept the risk of like 2 takeoffs and landings or over 7 days, like that's their threshold for the level of risk they're willing to take, is kind of how I view it. But you're right, it is a little vague on what they're looking at. As far as the forward or looking back 7 days, I don't have a great answer for that. Like I said, the fire chief's going to push, publish a NOTAM if they're going to be at the reduced or critical level of service. So I think there is probably a little gray area in there for how you want to take it.
Hey, it's Joel. We ran into this at the AMD on my deployment with the C-130s. As we were closing down fields in Afghanistan, we started pulling the crash fire rescue stuff out. And that's another term for this as well, because when people started talking about CFR, I was like, what in the world are you talking about? And then they were like, oh, yeah, crash fire rescue. So those terms I've seen used interchangeably, CFR and ARFF. But the issue we ran into was that not everything is in G2. For us, for the most part, I would expect like our category airplanes, I would expect it. But in the C-130 world, we had MC-130s going in there. We had all sorts of different things that were causing problems. And I'll tell you that no one cared. And when I mean no one cared, like we were tracking our own AMD aircraft, but then like no one at the airfield was like, oh, well, this MC-130 landed, so then this one can't. So it was just kind of madness. So all we did at the AMD when we were running it was exactly what Ralph brought up. Was we ran a station workload, and we kept an eye and we tracked our AMC airplanes. And then if we went over 2 takeoffs or 2 landings, we would just request the waiver. So it's a little bit different, obviously, in CENTCOM because we were doing it through the DERMA before. But ultimately, yeah, it was just kind of self investigation on how we would deal with it.
That's awesome. Thanks everybody for your input. I'll make some updates to the slides and I'll shoot it out on the Slack channel. This is my first time teaching CT, so if you guys have any critiques, whatever, please shoot them my way so that I can work on it for next time. If nobody has anything else, then that concludes my briefing for today.